Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I've got 3 awesome stories for y'all today. Yeah, we're doing another compilation. I'm super excited because this is all strange history, all stories that if you read them anywhere, you'd be like, this can't be real, type stuff. If you're new here, my name is Brandy, and what I do is different kinds of dark history, strange history, anything about witches or vampires or werewolves or anything like that really interests me. And so I kind of bring those stories back to life while I put some makeup on my face. I do list what I use below, and the comments are in the info section. You guys know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't subscribed, please do, as I'm new and I am trying to grow. But today I am bringing you guys 3 crazy stories. Absolutely insane, yes. And it's going to be great. So let's go ahead and get this party started. So our first story today is about the U.S. government and what it did during Prohibition. Now, if you're not very familiar with Prohibition, I shall tell you, it was a 13-year thing where the U.S. did not sell alcohol, prohibited the sale of alcohol. They made it a law in 1920, and they finally got rid of it in 1933. It was the 18th Amendment. But during all this, they were trying to deter people from drinking. I get that, that people were getting too wasted maybe, and they were causing too much of a ruckus, but they decided to cancel alcohol altogether. Well, what does that do? What does that do for most people? That makes you want to do it even more. You wave it in somebody's face and say, you can't have this. They're like, I kind of want that. All this did was encourage people to create their own alcohol, okay? And that's what they did. They had moonshiners. These people would run these cars. They would soup up some cars and they would run these cars and deliver alcohol to different places. Totally illegal, but totally, it was a gangster thing back then, And so with Prohibition came the opening of like speakeasies and things like that, stuff that, a place where people could go and kind of sneak a drink, And that's all fine and dandy, but the U.S. realized that they could not completely tell people to stop. Like, they couldn't just stop selling it, like, altogether, because of, they had to kind of slow down their consumption. And they did this by poisoning the alcohol that they sold. The U.S. government poisoned the alcohol they made and sold it to the public. Now, these moonshiners they were using industrial grade alcohol, like the kind of, I'm guessing kind of like rubbing alcohol. That's what they were using to distill it into alcohol, okay? Which is dangerous in itself because that can absolutely kill you. And so now we have the government who's like, okay, let's put a bunch of stuff in the alcohol and this will make them not want to drink anymore, Not thinking that maybe it'll kill them, No, they didn't think about that. They were just wanting them to stop drinking, point blank period, okay? They would use methanol as well, or AKA wood alcohol, which would make people go blind if you drank a bunch of it. So some of this moonshine was really, really, really strong and made with really, really wrong ingredients. But people were doing what they had to do back then when they didn't have anything to drink. And they were just making their own stuff. I mean, they even had shoes made up to look like cow hoofs so that nobody would know, like, where their little moonshine place was or whatnot. Like, I mean, I'm telling you, it is absolutely bizarre. But here we go. Let me just tell you guys, the ingredients that they added to the alcohol that they already had, that they were just trying to get rid of, and then they were going to stop it completely, the government. The list is insane. And this list is so long that I'm going to have to look at it in order to tell you guys about it, because they put so many different things in there and it's mind-blowing. Okay, so we got kerosene, gasoline, brucine, which is similar to strychnine, Yeah, we've talked about that. Benzene, cadmium, iodine, zinc, mercury salts, nicotine, ether, formaldehyde, chloroform, camphor, carbolic acid, quinine, and acetone. That's the stuff they were putting into the alcohol that the government was selling and trying to just get rid of it. It's mind-blowing. That is absolutely disgusting. That all of that stuff can kill you like that. So of course the government, along with all those ingredients, also decided that the chemical formula should include 10% of methyl alcohol. Yeah, they're like, yep, go ahead and fill it up with some of that methyl alcohol. Sorry about the pause, clicking. You know, I mean, it's just bizarre. It's bonkers. And so a fatal dose of methyl alcohol is only 25 milliliters. That is not that much. And they were making sure that 10% of this alcohol was made up of this stuff. Okay, so you can only imagine what happens when people start buying this alcohol, because they do buy it unbeknownst to them that it's tainted, and they drink it. So Christmas of 1926, 66 people died from this industrial poisoning from the government, okay, through alcohol. And then on New Year's Day of 1927, 41 people died because of buying this alcohol and drinking it. Not only that, during the whole Prohibition era, at least 10,000 people died from the U.S. government giving them this alcohol with all those ingredients I just listed in it. And they really didn't think that anything bad was going to happen. I understand they're trying to deter people from drinking alcohol, but 10,000 people lost their life during this because the government poisoned them. That's just absolutely mind-blowing. I'm sorry, but it is. It's mind-blowing to me. And I mean, why am I surprised? I don't know. But it is what it is. That's history. Obviously, they wouldn't do that now, I mean, they just wouldn't. And so, but it's a great story, and it's almost unbelievable. But yes, they did. They added all these things to alcohol during Prohibition to make people stop drinking, and it ended up killing tens of thousands, 10,000 people or more. Yeah, absolutely bonkers. For our next story, we are going to be in Boston. Yes, Boston back in the 1600s, okay? In the Massachusetts Bay Colony that was still under control of England at the time. And during that time, the Puritans had a hold of England. And you're like, okay, so what does this have to do with Christmas? Well, they decided to cancel Christmas. The Puritans did. In the 1600s. Oh yes, they did. My neighbor is getting his lawn cut. There's like really nothing I can do about that. I'm so sorry, you guys. So if you hear the little buzzing sound, it's because my neighbor's outside mowing his lawn, which is totally chill. Well, let's talk about Christmas in the 1600s. It's nothing like it is now. You know how everybody starts putting out Christmas stuff in July, pretty much? Yeah, it used to not be that way. Okay, let me just tell you, because Christmas was more like, I would compare it to Mardi Gras. It was a huge party. Drinking, feasting, playing games. And the reason why the Puritans didn't like this was because the holiday came from the pagan holiday of solstice. Yes. They did not like that. They did not like that at all. And plus, Puritanism was kind of founded on being the ones that are always outside of the box thinking, They're always going to be the pious ones that are so, you never dance, you never sing, you never do anything. And so since England was under this Puritan power, they decided to cancel Christmas in Boston. Yes, they did. Cancel Christmas. There was another thing that they would do too on Christmas that the Puritans didn't like. The poor people would go to rich people's houses and ask them for like food or handout or whatever. And if they were denied, things could get violent. like really, really quick. It's kind of bizarre. I don't know why, but that's just kind of the way it was back then. And so they had that was frowned upon, obviously. And so even in the song, "We Wish You a Merry Christmas," it says, "Now bring us some figgy pudding. We won't go until we get some," which just kind of makes the song a little bit more creepy, in my opinion now. So what did the Puritans decide that Christmas Day was going to be for? Fasting. Yes. All right. So they officially banned it on May 11th, 1659 in the Massachusetts Bay Colony area. Okay. That's like Boston now. And the Puritans actually repealed the ban, okay, and it wasn't until 1681 that they did it. 1681 is when they finally decided to do it, to undo the Christmas Day situation. Now, there were a few people that were upset about this, obviously, because, you know, most people were Christian, and it's unbelievable that such a Christian group would, you know, be the ones to say no to Christmas. But eventually, though, people started to come back around after, I don't even know, what, 30-something years? After they kind of lifted the ban because they wanted to be like England, and they tried to ban it in England, but everybody in England went bonkers. They were like, we're going to do this anyway. We're going to hang our holly, and we're going to do this and this and this. They rebelled. And so it didn't last long over there, but it lasted a little while over here. And so after a while, the Puritans were like, okay, our laws need to match up with England's laws, blah, blah, blah. And so that's how Christmas came back. But Christmas didn't become really popular until after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Yeah, like people didn't celebrate it like they do now. It was not a huge, giant celebration with the tree and like all that stuff. They looked at that as pagan symbolism, which it is. I mean, they're not wrong in that department. It is. Christmas is a lot of symbolism with paganism and the holiday of winter solstice, you know? And so they weren't wrong, but I don't think you should cancel Christmas just because of that. And so, but it did last for a while, and it took a long time before people really got back on board with Christmas because of this law. Because if you got caught celebrating Christmas, they charged you a fine. Yes, like 5 shillings. I don't know how much that is, but if you got caught celebrating Christmas during this time, you were fined. Oh yes, it is absolutely bonkers. And then another thing that made Christmas kind of popular again was the book, The Christmas Carol, that came out. I guess that kind of got everybody out of their humbug spirit and put them back into the Christmas spirit, because then people actually started celebrating again, and this was like in the 19th century, you know, so. But yes, Christmas was canceled for like 30 years in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Because the Puritans recognized it as a pagan holiday, and they didn't like that. So they made it into a day of fasting. And if you celebrated, you got charged 5 shillings. Can you imagine if they tried to do that now? If they tried to cancel Christmas? Like, wow, people would just go nuts. You know what I mean? So that story took me by surprise. I was literally shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot even believe this right now. They canceled Christmas. And I was thinking, oh, maybe it just lasted like, you know, a year or two. No, went from 1659 to 1681. It's insane. It's insane. But let's do the last one, because the last one is my favorite. So if you don't know who Albert Einstein is, he was a very, very incredibly smart dude, obviously. He created a lot of inventions. He invented a bunch of stuff. He was very, very smart, okay? Most everybody knows who Albert Einstein is, so I don't feel like I need to go into that great detail. But during the time that he was living, it seemed to be a habit that when somebody was a genius, they would want to keep your brain after you passed in order to study it and compare it to, say, normal people's brains that are smart and see what the big difference was. This was kind of a popular thing, and it happened with this man named Charles Babbage. Half his brain was kept and studied. He invented the first computing machine. And so evidently the guy was a super genius. And so it's actually still on display at a museum at the London's Royal College of Surgeons now. Yeah. So half of his brain is up there, this guy, Charles. And but that was just something they kind of did because they were very interested in knowing what made these people so incredibly smart, you know? But Albert Einstein he knew of this. He heard of this, and he told his son, he said, look, when I go, nobody's taking my brain. It's just going to stay inside my body. I'm making it clear right now. Nobody is taking the brain. Nobody takes my brain. Make sure nobody takes it. I want to go whole. Einstein knew that his brain would be useless to study. Probably because he knew that there was nothing else to compare it to. You can compare it to a normal brain. Yeah, sure, that's totally fine. But is it really going to be it's hard. There's not another Einstein brain to compare it to. You feel what I'm saying? So he knew that even trying to do it as like in a control group, there's no way that you'd be able to compare brains. And so that's why he was like, look, just leave my brain inside my body. Them looking at it is not going to give them any knowledge. He knew that. He was a smart dude. Ugh. And so that's why he denied it. He was like, no, please don't. Just let me go in peace with all my pieces. So Einstein ends up passing away on April 13th of 1955 at Princeton Hospital. Okay. And so they had of course, once his body, was down in the pathologist decided to open up his head and take his brain. 100%, yeah. And this man's name was Dr. Thomas Harvey. Like I say, he was a pathologist, and he decided that he was just going to help himself to Einstein's brain and straight took it and didn't tell anybody. So this man, Harvey, had to have opened this man's head, taken the brain, put the head back on, like the skull, and then made it look like nothing had happened because they went on and cremated the body, as was, I guess, Albert Einstein's wishes, was that when he passed, he would be cremated. So he gets cremated, but then after that, his son finds out about the theft, and he is pissed. He is so angry at this guy, and I would be too. I mean, if I knew that I just buried somebody, if I just buried my dad and he didn't have his brain, and somebody took it and didn't say nothing, like, especially when he specifically said, "Don't take my brain. I don't want that. That's not what I want." And so they tell him this after the cremation. He finds out afterwards, and he's so mad. But somehow, Harvey convinces Einstein's son to let him keep the brain for science purposes, right? They're going to study the brain. So what does he do? He takes it home. Well, he already took it home before the cremation and cut it up into 240 pieces. He cut this man's brain up into 240 pieces and stored them in 2 mason jars. Yes, he did. He did that. Now, unfortunately for Dr. Harvey, when his colleagues found out what he had done, they thought that was the absolutely most disrespectful thing ever, and I'm 100% on board with them. But yeah, they were like, dude, no. So he lost his job at the Princeton Hospital. Lost his job because he took this brain. Not only that, I feel like the brain is cursed, okay? Because he lost his job and his wife left him too. So what does Dr. Harvey do after he loses his family and his job, his prestigious job? Thank you, Ulpan. What does he do? He goes to the Midwest, away from Princeton, and he starts practicing medicine out there, starts running a few labs, you know, things like that. This man kept the brain for decades, okay? Yeah, he did. He kept it for decades, and he actually ended up keeping it under his like beer cooler. Yeah, he kept it under his beer cooler in pieces still, in a cider box, because he was still trying to unlock the secret of Einstein's brain or whatnot. But then in 1978, somebody becomes curious. A reporter becomes curious about Harvey and wants to know, where is Einstein's brain? Because he knows that he took it, and he locates Dr. Harvey. So a reporter tracked Harvey down in Wichita, Kansas. Found him in Wichita, Kansas. And he was like, hey, what's up, man? 1978. He's like, hey, do you still got Einstein's brain anywhere? And so the reporter ends up finding the brain, writes an article about it, and all of a sudden everybody and their mom, that's a scientist, wants a piece of this brain. And we come to find out later that Harvey had actually given out pieces of the brain to his friends who wanted to research it. He was just like, oh yeah, here's a piece. Here's a piece, yeah. Oh, you want a piece? Here you go, Merry Christmas. It's like, he just giving this man's brain out like it was nothing. I mean, the utter disrespect. And you wonder why he lost his job and his freaking wife. I mean, I feel like the brain, like I say, is cursed. It is. And so anyway, yeah, in 1985, scientists began studying his brain because they refound it again. You know, they tried to study his brain. They tried to compare it to other normal brains. But the problem that people kept coming into was they don't know that if the structure of somebody's brain is what makes them smart. Like the actual structure of it. Yes, there could be pieces missing and things like that, but they did compare his brain, and there were some differences, but not enough to make like a huge finding of like, you know, oh, he has a certain part in his brain that's bigger than everybody else's. It wasn't ever anything like that. And plus it was cut up into pieces. So how could they even know? So where is Einstein's brain today, you ask? Well, it is at Princeton Medical Center, and it's kind of under lock and key. There's not a lot. They won't even let researchers at it, pretty much. And the messed up thing is, since I told you guys that he gave out pieces to his friends, yeah, he did. There's still pieces of this man's brain floating around out there somewhere with some people, and they don't even know that that's his brain. I'm telling you. That story absolutely blew my mind. I felt so bad that they went against his wishes like that and did him like that. And now, even if somebody showed me a piece of Einstein's brain, I'd be like, nope, get it away from me. That thing is cursed. That man lost his job. He lost his family. He lost his wife. Like, all for the sake of research. No, I don't think so. He should have just respected the man's wishes. Point blank, period. So, but anyway, so that is our stories for today. And I hope you guys really enjoyed it. I like doing the strange, weird historical facts that nobody's ever heard of. But they all sound fake, but I promise you they all happen, and it's absolutely bizarre. So I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I do. And like I say, I love you guys so much, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week.